No, this stuff. This other
Oh, I thought you were
No.
All right, good evening, everyone. I wanted to call to order our Thursday, December 18th meeting of the Public Art Commission. So we are in the new, what room is this called? The community. I know, but wasn't it Coverly Community Room or something like that? I thought it had a name. No.
No, just I think the community room.
Okay, great. In City Hall, so this is exciting. Okay, we're going to start with our roll call. So I guess I can start with Commissioner Silverstein. Present. And Commissioner Ross. Present. Oh, microphone's on. There we go. Present. Thank you. And Commissioner Ross. Present. Commissioner Middahl.
Present.
And then Chair Kavanaugh, I am here. And we also have with us Councilwoman Holman. Thank you for coming.
You bet.
And then our great staff, of course, Nadia Trina and Elise DeMarzo. So we have a couple of commissioners who aren't here. But I think we can move on to agenda changes, requests, and deletions. I don't believe there's any. We have 2 items. So hopefully we can just move through those good ones. But hopefully there are any changes. No? Good. Okay, and oral communications. Did we have anyone who wanted to speak from the public? Doesn't look like it. No cards. See how we are just moving through this swiftly this December meeting.
What a job.
So, approval of minutes. We actually have a couple to approve because we have a special meeting on December 9th, but we'll do them in order by saying the last, our commission meeting was on the 20th of November. I had a chance to take a look through those and I didn't have any corrections. Did anyone else have any edits, corrections, changes, requests? Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve those minutes. Does anyone second?
Second.
Oh, thank you. Second by Commissioner Silverstein. All in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, so motion carries. And then for our December 9th special meeting, which was one to review the new ordinance for the municipal percent for art policy. And pretty straightforward, so again, I'll make a motion these were accurate and fine as they are. Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Aye. Oh, abstain because you were not there, so if we have 3 of us,
You need to have a majority.
we're gonna have to postpone on these guys until.
Mia's back?
She's
coming,
right? She is going to be here later, that's right, we expect, so we could, although it'll be out of order, so we'll just wait till next time. All right, sorry about that, thank you. I forgot that you were with us. Okay, moving along, now we will do our financial report. Please, Elise.
Financial report is fairly short and sweet. If you start with the Art and Public Places CIP, the only change is that the item for City Hall lobby, which was under PAC approved future projects, is now moved up under commitment since the contract is signed and those funds are encumbered. So that is the only change on the CIP budget. Are there any questions?
Oh, I didn't have anyone else? No, okay.
And then on the maintenance budget, we have no changes this month, so we still have an available budget of $23,000. We are planning to come back in January with an estimate for doing some of the appraisal work that we're anticipating doing this year. So we do anticipate coming back in January with a plan for those. And then with the municipal percent for art funds, we still have the $30,300 that was transferred in at the beginning of the fiscal year. Are there any questions regarding the budgets?
So in the case of something like the municipal, we all, we're observing the bike competition, the bike and pedestrian bridge competition, and looks like there was a group selected, and that project actually had an artist involved, which is terrific. And so would this be something where we would be able to potentially recommend an allocation from this as to augment that?
You could if you wanted to. the estimated, or what they've allocated for the, percent for art is $80,000. So when that project comes forward to the commission in January, and you evaluate the proposals, you can determine which direction you wanna go. But those, in answer to your question, those municipal CIP funds can be used in a diversity of ways, temporary, buttress, supporting other smaller municipal projects. It's really left purposefully open and broad.
Good, okay, that was the only question I had. Anybody else?
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So, given this is rather, well, it's not exactly new, with the bridge competition, so if the cost of the art is integrated into the project proposal itself, then that means you wouldn't have to transfer money, right?
Well, the funds haven't come to us, they're still remaining with the project budget at this time, so no funds have been transferred to public art for that. We've just been notified that the percent for art would be 80,000. So, depending on the direction of the project, we could choose to allocate more funds toward that artist, and that artwork, but we'll need to wait until January when that comes to the commission to evaluate it.
Okay.
All right, I guess I'm ready to move on if there's no other questions. So we'll have our staff comments.
Okay, so I'm gonna start with, that little event on December 6th, that was the opening of the Mitchell Park Library Community Center. And we have some printed materials here and some programs from that day. And there's a rather nice section all about the public art at the facilities there, if you want to pass some of those around. It was a huge success with more than 5,500 people who attended over the course of the day. We have pamphlets, postcards, and of course the owl bookmarks here that have been very popular. Artists Bruce Beasley, Roger Stoller, and Mark Verlander were all in attendance. Thank you to the commissioners who were present as well to interact with the public. We were planning to host an evening event to invite the artists to speak, likely this February. And there was a nice piece about the opening of Palo Alto too, so I'm going to pass that along. The update on the artwork at City Hall lobby, as you can see, construction is well underway and some of it is beginning to be completed. The contract with Susan Narduli was approved by council December 1st, and staff is working to arrange a date in January in which Susan and her team can come to Palo Alto and meet with the design team as well as present concepts and ideas for conversations and gather input. We're looking forward to that. And then third, we discussed a little bit earlier, the bike and pedestrian bridge. So there is a winning design that was just selected last night. I don't know how many of you were able to log on and have a look and comment, but the selection panel has ranked the 3 proposals. And this is the first proposal, the one that is ranked first. And so it's California Firms HNTB Engineering, 64 North, Bionic Landscape Architecture, and NedCom make up the winning design team at this point. So all 3 of the concepts, Nadia, do you have all 3 of them to show? So this was the first ranking, and then the one that was ranked,
That one was that one being the third, wasn't it? It was the flat one, the second.
yeah, I think that was the third ranked one.
Correct.
So that was kind of it was like a ship, was sort of the metaphor,
Yeah,
right?
the canoe.
Canoe, sorry. I wasn't there, but I heard.
And then this was the second ranked one, and it's all on that website, so you can look at the details more closely. But they are going to make the rounds to all the various boards and commissions to gather input prior to returning to council with their recommendation. So they are planning to come to the Public Art Commission in January. We're very much looking forward to that process as well.
And just, this visual doesn't do this one. It doesn't tell much about it.
It's the picture they went with.
And that's it for staff comments this evening.
Okay.
And these, so the ones that the rankings Is it just the top ranked one will come, or because it's been selected and they're going to take input, or what's happening in January or February? Whenever you said that was going to come.
In January, well, they're starting, going around to the commissions, I guess in January. I'm not sure that they're getting to anyone between now and the time everyone leaves. But they will show all three designs and share the ranking that the panel gave them, and then gather input from each of the boards and commissions. So they will show all three.
Okay, well, so let's move on to our action items tonight. We have two, and the first one is one that we've been talking about for more than a year, which is the public art master plan. So I think where there's a presentation by you and Barbara, or just Barbara?
Well, I'm going to start with giving some background and context to it, and introduce Barbara Goldstein, who is here this evening to give a presentation and field questions from the commission. So the Public Art Master Plan, as Chair Kavanaugh mentioned, has been discussed for a number of years with the Commission, and the Chair Kavanaugh and Vice Chair Miyagi have both advocated for this as a priority for this year, so it seems fitting that we were getting it in December. So it's been a discussion over the course of a number of years. There was a lot of research and input that went into putting together the call. On August 20th, 2014, Palo Alto released an RFP for a public art master planner. The call was sent to 5 known public art master planners, as well as posted on Americans for the Arts Public Art Network and the City of Palo Alto website. 6 proposals were submitted. A selection panel comprised of Public Art Commission Chair Kathleen Kavanaugh, Public Art Commission Vice Chair Ben Miyagi, Palo Alto Art Center Director Karen Pinzel, Parks and Open Space Manager Darren Anderson, Director of Arts and Sciences Raina Halpern, and Public Art Program Manager Elise DeMarzo, all independently reviewed and ranked the proposals. The applicants were scored for qualifications and experience, the strength of previous master plan samples submitted, the outreach process and effective creative outreach methods, demonstrated ability to tailor the outreach process and the plan to the specific community, and the cost to the city. When staff compiled the scores, the applicant team of Barbara Goldstein and Gail Goldman was ranked first for 5 of the 6 panelists and scored much higher than any of the other proposers. They were interviewed November 21st. The panel recommended that the applicant team of Goldstein and Goldman move forward for commission approval, but recommended amendments to their original submitted work plan and budget. The applicants submitted a revised work plan December 3rd, and staff has been in discussion with the applicant seeking clarifications on various aspects of the work plan and proposal. And some of the samples are here, including Barbara Goldstein's Public Art by the Book, which is really the handbook carried by arts administrators. So first I'll talk a little bit about their qualifications and start with Gail Goldman. Gail Goldman has conducted 19 city, county, and transportation-related public art master plans that include policy and legislative analysis, development of administrative guidelines, identification of artwork locations and project goals, artist selection methodology, project implementation, and community engagement. Prior to establishing Gail M. Goldman Associates in June 2000, Ms. Goldman was the founding director of the Public Art Program for the City of San Diego and the director of the Art in Public Places Program for the state of Colorado. Goldman co-founded the Public Art Network, the first and only national professional public art association of its kind in the United States, and served as a member of the inaugural PAN Council. She helped establish the National Task Force for Public Art and the National Assembly for Local Arts Agencies, now Americans for the Arts, and served as its first chair. She's the founder and past chair of the Public Art Coalition of Southern California, the first regional association for public art administrators in the United States that served as a model for similar coalitions later established throughout the country. And then Barbara Goldstein is an independent consultant focused on creative placemaking and public art planning. She is the former public art director for the City of San Jose Office of Cultural Affairs and editor of Public Art by the Book, a primer published by Americans for the Arts and the University of Washington Press. Ms. Goldstein has directed the public art programs in Seattle and Los Angeles, worked as a cultural planner, architectural and art critic, editor, and publisher. She's lectured widely and participated in workshops on public art in the United States, Japan, China, Taiwan, Korea, Canada, the Netherlands, and Abu Dhabi. She is past chair of the Public Art Network Council of Americans for the Arts. She's an active member of the Northern California Public Art Administrators Network. Since 2011, Ms. Goldstein has been developing public art master plans, guidelines, policies, and procedures for Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Pasadena, California, and Las Vegas, Nevada. She participated as the public art consultant for Charlotte, North Carolina's Rail Trail Plan and is assisting the city of Morgan Hill, California with its downtown creative placemaking efforts. In 2013, she led a series of webinars entitled Creative Placemaking in Public Art for Americans for the Arts. Barbara Goldstein is here this evening to give a presentation about the master planning process for Palo Alto and answer the Commission's questions. And so with that, Barbara, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for considering us for this master plan. We're really excited about this. I'm particularly excited because I'm starting at Stanford in January, so it's going to be really wonderful to be able to be a student there and work here at the same time. So Elise asked me if I would give you an overview of what the Public Art Master Plan will consist of. And so I'm going to run through our work plan, and I really would welcome any kind of input that you have or suggestions. So there are a few basic phases to putting together any public art plan, and these are the ones that we have outlined. Oh, sorry. I was afraid that I was going to be blocking the it's sort of like a choice between the microphone.
Do you want to maybe
If
scream?
you don't mind me
It's
sitting
okay.
down.
Oh, it's
You just
okay, they can pick up, as long as you speak, as
Talk.
loudly as you were doing fine. You're just
Okay.
standing back where you were,
Can
according
you
to
see
our.
the screen? That's the question.
Your back.
We'll do a little sound test.
All right.
Careful.
Don't break the new monitor. So these are the 4 phases that we're going to be involved with this project. Research and project planning, community outreach and public participation, synthesis of the emerging themes, and draft and final public art plan. I took this photograph in Pittsburgh in the planning department. I was intrigued by the number of plants that were sitting on the shelf. We don't really want this plant to be sitting on the shelf. We want it to be a living plant. And the first part of planning is, as outlined here, we need to meet with the project staff to take a look at what's here and learn about the program. We think it's very important to have a public art advisory committee that is made up of a cross-section of people from Palo Alto that represent different parts of the community, and we will be working with staff as well as hopefully you'll come up with suggestions about what that cross-section might consist of. We'll be looking at existing policies, procedures, guidelines, and planning documents, not just public art planning documents, but planning documents that have been created for the Parks Department, any kind of general plan updates, things that are going to impact the way that Palo Alto evolves. We'll be looking to identify the key internal and external stakeholder groups and individuals, and we'll be assessing the artwork in the existing collection. The next phase is community outreach and public participation. In that phase, what we'll be doing is individual interviews and focus groups. We'll be conducting a public forum, and we'll be inviting participants in each of these meetings to mark potential sites for public art on Palo Alto street maps. This is the kinds of questions that we'll be asking, and we would welcome your thinking about that. My experience in Gales is it's much better to ask an open-ended question than to ask something really specific, like, do you like this piece or that piece, or what pieces do you like? It's better to get people to think about how they view Palo Alto in the present and in the future, and what are the things that they value about Palo Alto. So these are some of the questions that we're thinking about asking, and we would welcome your thoughts on these as well. These are some of the constituencies that we're thinking about talking with. The advisory committee, arts organizations and museums, artists, designers, business leaders, business associations, corporations, private developers, foundations, schools and universities, young people and old people, neighborhood groups. We would like to do a portion of artist-led outreach. It's not currently in the budget, but the idea is not everybody likes to go to meetings, and people that like to go to meetings and other people don't. So it's sometimes a really good idea to reach out to people in the communities that they inhabit. And so I've worked on a number of projects that have really involved artists in pulling information out of people. And so the idea is to get people to think about how public art could enhance the city of Palo Alto, but go to them and make it fun. So this is a project that I've been working on recently. Part of the public art plan for Pittsburgh, it was a requirement that there would be artist-led outreach. And I brought in John Rubin, who's the head of the community arts program for Carnegie Mellon University. He used to be at California College of Art in Oakland. And what he did was he did a project called Talk Pittsburgh, which was a 90 neighborhood mobile talk show. He rented a transparent truck and he made it into a TV studio. And he hired 2 different actors that were familiar with running interviews, and then they parked the truck in front of a landmark in these 90 different neighborhoods, and then they just conducted a talk show where they recorded people's thoughts about their neighborhoods and that kind of thing. And that is now showing on the city's TV station and through its website, and it has informed the entire, it informed the public art plan, and it also informed the urban design plan. Another kind of artist-led project that is kind of interesting is a project that was called Trappings, that was done by a pair of artists, Renee Paichaki and her partner, and whose name I'm just blanking on right now. But they did a national project that was about women in power, and they interviewed women all over the United States in lots of different circumstances and asked them a question about what it was that they wear that makes them look powerful. And that was a way into talking about what makes women feel powerful. And that project was exhibited in many different venues. It was exhibited in buses, on bus placards. It was done as museum exhibits. It was done as a book. And it provoked a very interesting conversation. So that's what we mean when we think about artist-led outreach. So once we get through all of the interviews and community meetings and research, then we'll come up with a document that basically is a synthesis of the emerging themes. What are the things that people are saying? The emerging themes basically become the key items that form the direction of a public art plan. So we'll develop a set of findings in a report that articulates those, and those will become an aspect of the draft, and we'll then bring it to the advisory committee for comment and to the Arts Commission. The elements of the draft plan are as stated here: what we've heard, what themes have emerged, what policies, procedures, and guidelines will help to reinforce those ideas, how artist selection should be conducted, including things like what maintenance considerations should be thought of when you're developing an artwork, what are some of the partnership and funding opportunities, and then short-term, mid-term, long-range implementation strategies and project priorities, including budgets and funding sources. And then the final plan will include comments that we receive, it will include maps, and it'll get presented to internal and external stakeholders for comments, and then the final plan will be presented to City Council for approval. So that basically is how it goes. When we start meeting with Elise and other staff, we'll be able to plot out a schedule to see what period of time it will take to do this project. And we hope we have the opportunity to come to you on a number of occasions to discuss it. So I'm happy to answer any questions and also to hear what your comments are.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks
You're very
for
welcome.
putting together the presentation. As Elise mentioned, I was one of the early advocates for master planning because it's kind of part of who I am and what I do for a day job, and so I like to have guiding documents. And so I thought I was going to just be a little selfish here and start by asking my couple of questions off the top because I missed the November 21st interview. So actually I have 4 questions, and the first one is in your revised work plan, I mean, you had said that you'll need the additional support of the staff to accomplish some of these tasks because you had to revise. I guess maybe it's a question for the both. I mean, does it feel like the public art program has the resources to be able to provide the kind of support that Barbara would need and Gail would need on that?
We've been in contact, getting some clarification on some of that language about what is entailed, and so that's something that we would flesh out in more clarity in the contract, but yes, it is something that we can certainly find our way through and negotiate.
Because some of the things certainly seem like they're not simple, and I know Nadia and Elise already have full-time jobs, and so part of why you go to a consultant is because then it sort of augments your ability, and so I can understand with the constraint that could be a problem, and I guess I'm concerned about that, so we might talk about that yet further in among my other questions, but for now, I guess the next one is kind of related to that. So when you did the revised proposal, it looked like we reduced maybe the number of individual interviews,
Yes.
and perhaps one public session was
Yes.
eliminated. I guess I'm a little less worried about the graphics because I have confidence. I've seen you present many times, and you always have fabulous PowerPoint and
Thank you.
and reports and books and so on. And I'm sure you maybe do have help, but at the same time, I feel like it's the content maybe less. But I guess my question would be, I mean, do you feel like you have enough? Well, I mean, I'm wondering, I guess the other question is, we have a number 34 individual interviews. I'm wondering if that's a very specific number, so do we have too many of those and would want to allocate?
34 is individual interviews and focus groups.
Oh, and focus groups,
It's a
okay.
combination.
So it's kind of, you got to that number through like a work plan yourself as you sort of thought
We
about
calculated
hours?
the time hours.
Okay,
And that's also, for clarification, because I asked the same question of Barbara as well, that's also beyond the phase 1.
when you say.
Right, after phase 1 of that outreach, so it's 34 after that first initial,
Oh, after
research
talking to the
period.
city stakeholder
Yes,
people,
exactly.
so are all the
Yeah.
people who would know.
It's the
Okay.
public outreach.
I gotcha.
so it's not 34 all in, it's beyond the initial research period.
Okay, and then, my question was about then how we form this advisory committee and kind of who would be on it and what's our process to do that, because, I mean, we are adjacent to Stanford, but they're not actually in Palo Alto, so
Yes, I
it's a
know that.
weird dynamic around, so it's like a university, we have Palo Alto University. So anyway, just thinking about just some of the constituents and how we would reach them, we don't have a lot of, we have some arts organizations, not a lot. So anyway, I was just curious how we would go about that process and who would be involved in that. Would that
Well, so what we will begin to do is to begin by talking with Elise and Raina and talk about the kinds of people that we think would be appropriate to have on an advisory committee. It's not all going to be arts people. It shouldn't.
Right.
So we should have probably a couple of commissioners, probably somebody from the Architectural Review Board, probably community and neighborhood representatives, representatives of ethnic organizations. We'll come up with a kind of general checklist and then start inquiring as to whether we're hitting this right, but also who from those groups should be on the advisory committee, because that's something that we obviously can't determine. The project that I completed in Pasadena about a year ago had an advisory committee that consisted of about 25 people. And incidentally, the advisory committee would be very engaged in helping us to convene focus groups, because presumably the advisory committee represents specific constituencies that we're going to want to hear from.
Okay, maybe, I can understand the advisory committee wants to be large and encompassing. I like the way you identified who some of those are. I worry about their role, if there's 25 of them, how you facilitate things that way, but I expect that you have some experience doing that. And then my last, so I just don't monopolize entirely, was, I guess, given one of the opening remarks that we talked about on our budget, if we have this sort of forthcoming appraisal, I'm kind of, again, of a mind where I would sort of think looking forward is probably the place where we want to spend more of our energy and time and money, as opposed to kind of looking at our current collection. It sort of feels like the master plan is to help us direct us forward. And so if there was a way to reallocate, my thoughts or comments would be to probably scratch that and put that time somewhere else. So those were mine. I will pass it along. Is there someone who wanted to take a guess? Questions? Anyone?
Thanks so much for coming, Barbara. So I'm new to this. I don't know too much about vetting proposals for public art master plans. It did strike me that the reduction of 2 public forums down to 1 seemed kind of sad, because I felt like, there are people that as you pointed out, there are people that come to meetings, there are people that don't come to meetings, but I almost feel like you have one, people that don't get there can get to the next one and have an opportunity to talk. So that was one thing I wanted to point out. When you brought up the artist-led outreach, that really seemed really exciting to me, because I almost feel like when I'm surveyed, and I speak for a demographic in Palo Alto that's a parent, a former designer, someone that really wants to have art in the city that we can be proud of, which means lots to lots of different people. You can elicit opinions through just involvement in things, and I think that we need to look at, and again, this is a lofty, very not well said goal, but it can be a lot of fun. It can be a lot of fun.
That's our idea.
To have, where's the fun in art? It doesn't have to be super cerebral and serious, because it can be that and fun at the same time. And I feel like the artist-led outreach kind of does 2 things. People don't even know that they're communicating about art in participating in it. And I would be so psyched if I was flipping through, when I do watch TV, the city website, and there was the movie that some artist put on that was reflecting back opinions about my city. I think that's, I think we could use art to address a lot of some of the issues that people have. So those are my 2 things, the lack of the public forum and that we can't seem to fit the artist-led outreach. So I would try to want to.
Well, I should explain that one of the reasons we had to cut down from 1 to 2 is because we were asked to have Gail and me be 50-50, which meant that we had to have her at every public forum. If we had split the forums, if we had a different distribution, it just. I live here and she lives in San Diego, and the request that she spent 50% of her time, that we split the thing 50-50 like that, just really made the whole calculation much more complicated.
Right. I mean, is there any way to take a pencil to that
Well,
get to
We've
what?
taken a pencil to it.
Yeah, so what?
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, I know.
No, but what we asked Barbara and Gail for was also an ad alternate budget. So if you recall in the call that we put out, we had the basic allocation and then a menu of services. So we have asked them to cost out, if they did an additional public forum, that it would be approximately $1,500. Artist-led outreach, clearly there's going to be variances there depending on the artist that is brought in, if they're project managing that temporary art project, or if staff manages that temporary art project. So that that could be anywhere between $10,000 to $20,000.
Okay.
So what staff is recommending this evening is for the approval of the contract with Gail Goldman and Barbara Goldstein to take on the public art master planning. And as they come in and we refine a proposal for those ad alternates, we will return to the commission and we can amend the contract to reflect those additional services should the commission decide to take those on.
And then I guess my only other thing was, so, like, largely the master plan is made up of soliciting opinions and advisory from these different types of people that live in the city and have vested interest in it. But at what point does, like, the consultant part come into it? So, you know, if you asked my husband or my neighbor about the process of selecting art, like, they don't know, and probably wouldn't even, they'd leave it blank, right? So I'm very interested in that. I'm very interested in knowing how we can be dynamic in terms of being able to bring a lot of art and do it in the most expedient, efficient way possible, and then also be able to, like, hold on to that art if we want to. Just some setting up of processes that allow for flexibility. So, like, how do you get to that?
Well, you don't solicit the public about how to select an artist.
Right.
But you solicit them about their vision of the place and what their aspirations are. And then there's a lot of there's a lot of listening involved, and that helps us to, and seeing what's here and what's worked and what hasn't worked and what could be and what people want. That helps us with direction, and then hearing and looking at things that have been successful, and including processes, which I expect we will hear both from internal staff and from commissioners and from some of the artists that we speak to. That will help us with things like what processes might work. Plus, we have a lot of knowledge of what's going on in the field and innovations in the field that have worked and things that have not worked. And also best practices, because a lot of places, quite honestly, take advantage of artists. I'm not saying that Palo Alto does, but there are practices that honor artists, and there are practices that don't honor artists, and there are ways to get to where you want to go and also be respectful of the fact that artists are professionals and they have the need to be properly compensated and treated in a way that is going to come out with the best outcome. So those are things that really we need to work on. We don't ask public opinion on it.
I have a quick question about, I see that you just finished working with the city of Claremont. And I had a couple questions. First of all, would you consider Claremont kind of similar to Palo Alto?
I didn't work with Claremont.
Oh, you did?
No.
Okay.
Gail
Oh, this
worked
was,
with
oh,
the
Gail
Golden
did.
Girls, but I didn't work
Oh, you
with
did, okay.
It's the other gold.
I guess,
The gold man, not the gold.
okay. So my question was, I guess, looking at the city of Claremont, their budget, their total project cost and what was done was the same. And my question is, if we were to ask, or could you tell us, or your colleague, tell us some of the things that really worked for them, or some things that maybe they felt, we could have spent more time on this rather than this? Is that something that we're able to do if we're to find?
I'm sure she would be happy to share that with you, and obviously there are.
So we know how to use our money in our.
I mean, they're both.
Obviously, resources.
Claremont's obviously a university town as well. And I mean, the fact that Stanford is such a big connection to Palo Alto. I know it's a different city. However, it has a huge presence in terms of people that are resident in Palo Alto and all of that. And it's similar with Claremont, because the Claremont colleges are such a big part of that community.
Because I think that would be perhaps valuable to all the commissioners, that we can see. Because maybe there's something in the proposal that we might want to change and say, look, this could be actually more valuable than this.
Although I think
Are you
Palo
flexible?
Alto's further along, of course, yeah. Palo Alto's further along than Claremont, because Claremont's program is fairly new. And your program has been around for quite a while, and you've learned a lot over the years.
Great, thank you for your.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Go ahead, Karen. Jim.
No, says Commissioner first.
So I had a couple of questions. First off, maybe this was one for staff. So have we contracted with, or are we about to contract with one entity or two entities? Given the scale of the project, we don't have a huge budget. why are we working with 2 entities instead of 1? Why are we just working?
We entered and we.
They
applied
entered
for-
jointly.
Okay,
And Gail is really a subcontractor to me.
she is, okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Was it feasible for you to consider doing this just on your own? So we
I
don't have to have
could have done
someone
it
who's
on
flying.
my own, but she called me when the RFP came out and asked me if I'd like to partner with her, and I
Okay.
felt that because she has got a lot more expertise working with private developers than I do, I thought she would be a really good asset because you have a new percent for art and private development, and I've worked with private developers quite a lot, however, she introduced the public art and private development program in San Diego and has had a lot of experience with things getting started out, and so I thought that she would be a really good asset to the team. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Second question is, can you talk about the most effective use of technology to gather input from the public? So for example, when you talk about maps and showing things, have you done things where you've had people use an interactive map online with Google Maps and they're placing pins and saying, hey, I'd like to do this here, or reacting to concepts, or is it just like survey monkey kinds of things? It'd be interesting to know what you found to work well in terms of gathering input.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of surveys, and the reason is because they're not smart enough. I mean, most of the survey monkey things, they don't give you, you don't get a fine enough level of information, and I haven't seen surveys that produce the kind of information that I need or I've wanted. We did a survey in Pasadena, and the information was just too broad brush. I think that it would be really interesting to develop an interactive way of doing mapping. We don't have the resources to do that, but I think it's a really great idea.
So do you use any technology to gather information from the public, or is it all talking on the phone or in person?
It's mostly in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the level of detail that will come out at the end, I'm wondering if you could point us to some of the plans where, I mean, there's things that we've come up with and said, hey, next that it's actionable as opposed to being descriptive. So for example, here's the way to manage a temporary art program. Here's ways to fund it. Or, I'm kind of curious as to which things will be more like a playbook, and what you found if we were to look at different examples of things that you or Gail have done that would be the most actionable.
Well, the plans that we've done, the Pasadena plan is basically just the executive summary, but the plans that we've done, both of us, have, they have, generally speaking, findings in the executive summary and directions, like these are the places where you should focus your thinking about public art, types of work, locations, things like that. Then they also have implementation budgets, they have guidelines, they have things like policies for acceptance of gifts, policies for temporary art, policies for memorials and monuments, policies for accession and deaccession.
All those would become as appendices to the plan.
Exactly. I mean, the one I just did for Pittsburgh had, I think it had 10 appendices in it, and a lot of them are really big action items, like how one action item for Pittsburgh was they were restructuring their commission from being to be more of an art and design commission, and part of what I needed to do for them there was a benchmarking of how it was done in different cities.
Okay.
So one of the appendices is benchmarking. It varies according to the city. For example, some places need you to write an ordinance, and that's not necessary here because your ordinance has just been written for private development and it's about to be updated for percent for art in public developments, public construction. So I expect that we'll be working more on creating guidelines and procedures or tweaking the ones that exist.
Great, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Karen, did you?
Yes. It's a council question. So this is going to go obviously to council. What I noticed is it says proposal cost sheet and rates, page 27, and I don't find a page 27.
Because in the revised worksheet, the budget was completely redone, and so we thought it was confusing to have both budgets in there because we asked for the amended budget, which is in the second work plan.
And where do I find that?
It should be attached there.
The revised budget.
Revised plans in the back.
Right there.
This
You're
is,
looking
this is
at
the revised one?
the bottom
Okay.
of the page.
Okay, this is the revised, okay. All right, then the other thing was, yeah, I couldn't tell that's what this was, sorry. Okay, the other thing is, there was mention that, there might be additional scope that might be suggested. If there was some way to identify that, at least approximately, before this goes to council, that would be really helpful. And the reason for that is because we have, oftentimes things that come to the council, they get approved, and then there's like an add-on. And nobody likes that.
Of course.
So there needs to be that kind of consideration. It doesn't have to be exact, but as close as it can get and what it's for, so that when we're looking at something, we're looking at a total context. We're looking at what we're approving now, and we're looking at what we might be encountering later. So again, there's no surprise later on down the road.
Of course, and that's why I was discussing, the ad alternate, the additional meeting would be approximately 1,500, and the artist-led, outreach, could be somewhere between 10 and 20, depending on the level of artist and who's project managing it. But it's the final product that would be coming to council, the final, report, because the contract amount is under the $80,000 threshold, right?
Well, but this contract is for 50,000.
Right, so it doesn't go to council because it doesn't.
Correct.
it doesn't-
Oh, because it doesn't meet the threshold, yeah, okay, that's what you're saying, it's
Yeah.
like it's that that's going to council,
It's
not this is
The
that's going to
final
council.
product would definitely come to council.
Okay,
as part of the
okay, got
process.
you, okay.
And we'll be talking with you along the way, individual.
Okay,
council.
all right, thank you for the clarification, thank you.
Of course.
Any other questions? I think, so then the process, at least from your point of view, is, so it sounds like you're going to, work on contract negotiations. I mean, there was a line in there about finalizing that. Is that the next step, basically?
Well, we're recommending this evening that the commission approve the $50,000 budget for the master planning. And then, yes, then we would go through contract negotiation. And hopefully in January, we're ready to come back and initiate the process. And we will come back with some proposals for budget amendments, should the commission want to take on the additional meeting for approximately 1,500, and maybe a couple options for artist-led outreach.
Great. Well, if there's no further discussion, I would make a move that we approve. I'm getting the language right. Yep, go ahead, one last question.
Sorry, so under the budget, it says up to 6 trips for Gil Goldman, so does that mean it could be less? Or
Yeah,
is that,
I would be surprised if it were.
okay,
but
could it be more?
If it's more, you're gonna be paying more for it.
Okay,
That's
so the
what we
budget,
budgeted.
okay.
We budgeted for 6
So
years.
if we're, talking about the 50,000 now, so that means that it could fluctuate, and that we're still.
No, it's not reimbursable.
It is, okay.
It's
No.
included in the $50,000 price. If it turns out that you want her to come more often than the contract says, that's an additional cost.
Okay,
Right, but the 50,000 is based on deliverables, and there's an agreement that it's up to so many trips, because clearly they don't wanna get into contract, and we say, well, we want Gail here for 10 trips,
right,
so.
okay.
And we just hope that the cost of air travel doesn't increase too much.
We did too. With the price of gasoline, I think that's going to go the opposite direction, so.
Let us pray.
So let's see, so I am going to make a motion that we approve Barbara Goldstein and Gail Goldman, if I got that right, as the public art consultants to work with us on the public art master plan.
I second.
Thank you, and then all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't believe I heard any. And the motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, we'll look forward to proceeding and getting started.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think once the contract gets started, then we would jump in, and some of this shows sort of month by month, and could take as many as 10, 12 plus 2 to produce, so a year. All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, our next action, second and final action of the evening, is our Project 3H5 Sherman Avenue, which we had seen once before, and they are swift workers. I think maybe Daniel might think otherwise, but we think it's swift. So anyhow, we're gonna have a final review and approval of a public art proposal. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's nice to be back. It's nice to be through the architectural review process and be working towards construction documents for a new mixed-use project just off of California Ave. I actually put a few slides on my laptop for a small group just because I wanted to make sure everyone knows where the building is. It is a CC2, I think that's probably a good way to do it, CC2 zone. It's a mixed-use project of four residential apartment units and commercial office, and what's replacing an existing one-story office building. If you look at this, Sherman Avenue is one block to the nominal south of California Avenue. These are the city parking lots that are just south of California Avenue. So California Avenue is at the top of the page. Page Mill would be at the bottom and parallel. El Camino Real to my left, and Central Expressway and the Caltrain tracks to the right. So this building really is at the pivot between a commercial neighborhood and a residential neighborhood. So architecturally, what we decided to do to take advantage of that mixed use is to have the commercial part facing the commercial, the residential facing stairwells part of the residential. And that also is a FAR 2.0, so a relatively dense site in terms of coverage. So we wanted to figure out where the best place for public art was. We discussed that with the commission in our initial review, and a lot of the interest was, is there something on the facade or in that vertical plane that would make most sense? So this is the back side of the residential.
Can you put those up there?
Yeah.
They don't know how to do it. I could email it, I
Well,
guess.
we need to, it needs to be
oh,
on
it
the
needs to
public
be.
screen. So,
Can I stand up?
well, we have the
I can
presentation
email it to you.
related.
How about I just email you? Yeah, there we go, that'll work, actually.
Okay.
These are simply just project renderings that were in the architectural review approval. Let's see if this will work for like, can I plug this into something?
Is it something that you used before in the?
Yeah, but it's a 3-page PDF. I just pulled it off of
Okay, go ahead.
So I just plug, if I plug that your blue thing into this thing, it'll probably work.
Okay.
If we're lucky.
So many different. Yay.
Just as I'm,
We're on.
are we?
Just give it a second.
Would you find a power cord that you want?
I didn't realize what I was
Sorry.
opening up by putting it on here.
So maybe we're not.
I can email to this one, we can pick up the location at the end, so you got it for record. How about that?
Okay.
So I'll email this to you right now. So we selected Charlie Gadigan, who's done some work, they've worked that's now very prominent in front of City Hall in Alto, and we started talking to him about what we could do with the facade in this exciting area, so I'll turn it over to him to talk about what we've come up with.
So Charlie, wanna come over here?
Well, welcome you back.
Nice to see you.
Thank you guys. Thank you very much for reviewing the piece of art. And thank you very much for your time. So so I put together this presentation. Basically, this is the building itself. And so basically, I'm Charles Gadigan, I made Aurora outside. This is another couple of the pieces of art I recently built. These are 50 feet tall LED pieces. This is a piece I just did in Africa with Absolute Vodka. Did an interactive fireworks show. We built this like glass cube, and then the audience and the band had triggers that made the fireworks go during the performance. It'll be a commercial coming out in January. This is another one of my pieces. This is a big hydraulic piece. It moves. It's 4 towers, about 25 feet deep. They move back and forth, and they have an LED show inside of it too. I will be collaborating. This is Aurora. Yeah, there we go. Out front, and this is another piece. I worked with another group called the Flaming Lotus Girls. We recently installed this piece on Pier 14 in San Francisco. I was one of the lead architects in the group when we built the piece, and this is up for the next 2 years. by the clock tower in San Francisco. And then these are just two other pieces of work that we made with the Flame Rose Girls. It's a 165-foot stainless steel serpent, and another piece called Utopia, which was a massive installation of plants turning into machines. I will be collaborating with another artist. His name is David Rogers, or D.V. Rogers. D.V. Rogers has been specializing in visual sound art and art installations based on seismic data. He has a relationship with the USGS. He did a couple of, this is a piece he has installed right now in LA called Domus. It is basically, this is running a live feed from seismic data that he's interpreting in this smaller installation. And this is like an earthquake structure that the sculpture is inside of. It's a low-cost, disaster preparedness building that that is showing. This is showing in LA right now. Dave also, here's two other pieces of Dave's work. There was the shake table, which was a big physical installation and piece of earth art that he installed in California, where and it too was getting live feed, and the table moves all hydraulic based. And another piece he did in Australia, which is called the Earth Lycete. Once again, this is like a map of the Earth going all the way around and running LEDs. And Dave's been doing a lot of work with data interpretation and using seismic data feeds. So this is the building. I do apologize. We were going to have a video of the piece, but the gentleman who was doing it is not able to finish the video, and it became a thing. But it's going to be a very subtle piece of art in the sense of an LED piece. It's basically going to be a monochromatic piece. It's basically, there are 68 fins. They're 14 feet tall. They'll have about a 3-inch strip here. There's the fin itself. We're taking an aluminum extrusion and putting an extruded piece of plastic across it. The LEDs will have 100% diffusion, which is like if you were to look out an aurora, you see all the dots of lights. This will have no dots. The sculpture itself is going to, as I said, be monochromatic, but running with full color LEDs. And so every day of the week, it will be a different color, but it will be the same color every day. Basically, on the piece, we're going to take, if you look below, this is a map of the world with it's a still picture of seismic data. There are earthquakes happening all over the planet all the time. And we're going to be generating this map of the Earth on that wall with the Earth rotating about once an hour. That'll allow the lights kind of just slowly moving down the screen at all times. The continental masses will be highlighted in a 10% of whatever the monochromatic hue of the day is. We are looking at, and then these circles are the seismic activity. And we're going to just have these little rings coming out. Now the screen itself is a very, very low resolution in the sense that it's 2.5 feet between each one of those bars. So part of getting the Earth to move down it will allow people to kind of see what's happening a little bit more. Another big aspect of this piece is we're going to put a screen down at street level, which will have a lot of explaining. It'll have a lot of the information. It'll have a picture of the Earth. It'll have a picture of the live feed, the data, and talk about what that information is being represented. I mean, we are, in Palo Alto here, we're all pretty close to pretty major earthquake faults, and I think it's something that everybody lives with. This piece is meant to be a very gentle thing. It's going to appear more like, I think, like a reflection on water, where it's a very soft, ripply feeling, much different than, say, Aurora or some of the other pieces, which are very bright and rainbowy colors. These are going to be a very gentle piece. So the piece itself, right now, we are thinking of running it from about 6 p.m. to midnight, and that's something that we can work with. The LEDs are completely adjustable in their brightness to try to be really topography of the neighborhood so that we can always reduce the light, bring it down a little bit less, close the window. The LEDs at that particular hours would run for 20 years at full brightness. We have designed a new system that basically will allow us to turn on and off every component in the piece remotely so that there is never a downtime, and it should be a really, really robust system with 2 solid-state hard drives and the entire piece being able to be run remotely. This piece will also be maintained by the building itself, and I think it will really have a really long lifetime. The piece itself, we titled it Tableau. I said that. It's been a title that we've been working on a little bit, and that Tableau, you know, is also it's a map of the world, and it's also a bit of a blank slate. So there is a possibility of kind of future alternative data sets that could be put on it. You know, and I think that it's more of a world, a back world, and it will certainly be running this seismic data for the next couple of years. But I think that there is an opportunity as this piece lives over time to look at other data sets that could be displayed across the screen. Down below, this is one of the visualization that is bringing in the data sets. Yeah, so this is one of DDR's pieces. This is kind of showing, this is the radiating lights that you get from reading seismic data. You know, so it's you have these kind of center and epicenters, and it's just kind of throbbing outwards. And I thought this one was kind of nice. Once again, this is pretty rainbow. We're going to be all monochromatic. And what did I have to stop in? There we go. It's 2 stop. End the slideshow. That's the end of the slideshow. So I don't know if anyone has a question. I would love to answer that. I think I'm really excited about the piece. I think it should be a wonderful addition.
Thanks for coming back.
Sure.
Nice to see you. So it looks awesome.
Thank you.
I did want to know, I know what monochromatic means, but what does monochromatic mean?
Monochromatic means it's just one color. So it'll be from white, say dark blue to white. And everything, and so.
So sad. I mean, the visuals are so awesome with all the beautiful colors. So.
Right. I feel, you know, I mean, we have the opportunity to do anything we want on it. It is going to be individually addressable LEDs, and there's going to be 3 strands inside each one. And so that's like 200 individually addressable LEDs inside each of the 14-foot columns. Right now, I think that we are going to run some visualizations. We have looked at possibly adding a little bit of color, like the whole screen is a single monochromatic tone, and then where the actual earthquake data is happening, maybe bring in a little bit of color. But one of the reasons that we felt that that monochromatic, even though it's changing color every day, so every day will be different, is that I feel that it would be really lovely to have in your neighborhood. You know, that's something that you want to live with for the next 20 years. You know, that it's not some kind of psychedelic rainbow thing kind of going off of the wall that has this kind of feeling of some kind of commercial billboard. You know, that if I had to have something across the street from me, I think by limiting the color scope, that if you take an example like the Bay Lights, which is it's just white, but you know I think it's more livable. You know, if you get out of that rainbow color. You know, I think that maybe, as I said, we might be bringing in a little bit of color to kind of just to make that information more accessible. But I really felt that if you can make beautiful things in those tonal qualities, and that's, you know, that'll be the trick, is making it beautiful and making it interesting. But if it was in my neighborhood every day, I could see how that would be. I think it would be beautiful. And I think that there's it requires a higher, a more sophisticated level to make that more beautiful, generating these patterns that do things that are fun, yet are not abrasive. You know, I don't want to generate a giant LED billboard in the neighborhood. You know, it wants to be something that feels beautiful and you can walk up to and see, but it's also an educational thing. You know, which is like putting us in perspective of the whole world and where we are in the world and this world in motion that we're around.
Go ahead.
Hi, I think
this looks really neat. Can you explain, I still don't think I understand how the map translates, like is it a wave, a seismic wave, or I
So
think I've
how
heard
the
that
wave,
already.
let's see, so if you go back to this one.
Yeah.
So basically, the map itself, so what we're going to do is we're going to take the picture of the Earth with all the continents. And if you thought of this as being a solid LED wall, and you would have the Earth slowly moving around, okay? And then there are going to be, and so you'll see the continents. And by moving the lights through those panels, you'll be able to see the land masses as they pass around the exterior of the thing. And then basically we're gonna, the earthquake data will be used as radiating circles from the point in which the seismic data is occurring.
So it'd be really similar to the Earth, that map.
It's
that
similar
you
to
see,
that
but-
map,
but-
except that 2.5-foot spacing,
Okay.
you know? So it is going to be very similar to that. The Earth is going to be kind of slightly compressed and slightly elongated. And you will kind of have this feeling of the continents going by. I mean, we want to generate some kind of identifiability to it, you know, where you're like, oh, look, that is an earthquake in Africa,
Yeah.
you know, without, you have to look at it for a little while to realize it's an earthquake in Africa. But if you look at it long enough, you'll say, hey, that's an earthquake in Africa. And there it goes down the screen. You know?
And then you mentioned that the lights can be turned down. Who would be able, you know, if you had a neighbor calling angry, you know, kind of.
So, there are 0 residential addresses that
Alright,
could,
that was my
that
other
could see
question.
either of these facades.
Okay.
It only goes to the parking lots behind California Avenue
Okay.
and office and retail locations.
Okay.
So we're specifically
That's
looking
question
at
number
that.
2.
Yeah, no, we would not do that.
Yeah.
We would work with, you know, that would certainly be something that we would work with Charlie. We would work with the property management team. We work with the city. We work on the neighborhood
Yeah.
to tune it in and always err on the side of being a neighbor.
And that's going to have a very public kiosk, kind of at street
Yeah.
level, you know, which I feel that it's going to have a high presence, and people will be able to comment about it, and people will be reading it. I will certainly be reading it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the other thing I like is the educational, the thing on the ground so people understand what it is. Sometimes, you know, I get frustrated with things like I know it's not art, but the dish on the dish, you know, like I don't know what it's used for, I wish they had a sign, you know.
Right.
Really, I feel like you have all these smart people in a university town that you have a way to educate, and so I think that's
Right, I
part
really
of that,
feel
I'd
that
like
the
to
touch screen is
say.
going to be a key component, you know, for people to understand what's occurring and you know, find avenues to have their feedback.
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Once again, I'll reiterate, this is beautiful. We are all talking about light and facades, and you fit the bill perfectly. So kudos to you and you. So my couple of questions. My first one is, what color will the panels be during the daytime?
Well, the aluminum extrusions are silver with a little bit of a white strip across the front. And it's an extruded plastic strip that all fits into this 14-foot tall extrusion.
Okay. And then I have another question and a comment.
Mm-hmm.
My other question is, during like daylight savings time, will you be able to adjust the lighting so it will be on later?
We will. I mean, especially because it's gonna be constantly receiving real-time data, and so it'll actually be able to adjust itself.
Okay. And then my other comment. This reminded me a lot of the City Hall building in San Francisco. How when the Giants won, they made everything orange. And I was just wondering, has that been something that you've thought about, like during holidays or during special times where you can just change? I don't know if you can, but change it panels to all one color, or
You know, that it's a serious question that the two of us have been arm wrestling about. You know, at some level, I like the idea of locking it down and having it not change, and that it is what it is. Yet there is that component, and and so I think from a public arts space, I personally am going to plan to lock it down, and it's not going to do that. It's just going to be blue on Monday and amber on Tuesday, and so that is the intention right now.
Okay, another question? Sorry. So is this, and this seems very futuristic to me, is this like something you've done, or either one of you, you know, it's definitely doable, or has it been done before?
I mean, aspects of it have been done. I mean, sure, it's been done. I mean, LEDs have been done, and it's not something that we totally invented out of the blue.
Yeah. And tied to that metal and all.
Tied into that
Yeah.
metal and in that extrusion, I have never seen that done. I'm not aware of it ever being done before. There are lots of buildings in the world that have put LEDs into them in a lot of different ways, but I have never seen this particular example before.
The aluminum extrusions are brise-soleil, they're sunshades that are in a vertical orientation. This facade on Sherman facing west is a very challenging environmental orientation. It gets the late afternoon sun. So, when the late afternoon sun gets lower in the sky towards the horizon, you can't use a horizontal sunshade because it doesn't do much, you're too low of an angle. So you start using these vertical ones to control how much air conditioning you need and make it so you need less energy in your building. So these things are actually a three-piece extruded aluminum product, how they're normally used. And what we're planning on doing is only using 2 of those pieces of aluminum, replacing one of the pieces of aluminum that works together with this lens that Charlie's working on different shapes for, and then using the cavity to fit the lighting into. So it's a product, or parts of the product that can be mass produced, can be maintained. You know, I like to say buildings last 100 years. Looks like LEDs last 20 years now. You know, it's something, how do we maintain it? How do we service the LEDs, right? How do we keep all this going so it's not just, you know, out.
Right, and even the lenses can be easily extruded. We can make more lenses in the future when we're going to produce a die for them. And so at any time in the future, you could just make more of them. And right now, they're going to be this kind of, the whole lens will just come right out and you can put a new one in with the LEDs inside of them.
I had 2 questions. First off, I think it's super exciting, very cool to see. And the questions I had were with regards to the cadence of the change of the light and doing something that you kind of feel it works aesthetically, and how you thought about that. So when let's say you're looking at one of the 57 fins or the panels, will it go, if it's a blue day, it's Monday, will it be blue for some period of time and then it'll shift? I'm kind of curious what visually will one see is if you're...
So once again, it's, and so it'll be for a lot of white. There will be a lot of white in this, and with the blues, and then basically you have a strip. I mean, say if you were had a map of the world and you're slowly moving that strip down, you'll see that line of the world moving around on the exterior of the strip. And so as you know, we're still working a bit on this, but you know, so this section here is going to be the continent, and then this period from here to here will be white. And as that moves across, that section is changing in and out with the dynamic activity kind of expanding and creating these kind of super dark spots that are happening. So every panel will be constantly in motion and constantly changing.
And when you talk about the blue and amber, those are the 2 colors and it'll alternate between those 2?
I love the color, but so far we've looked at a number of colors and we haven't settled on them.
Oh, okay.
The blue and the white is one I like a lot, and
yeah.
I love these kind of browner tones, and we are still identifying what the 7 colors will be. We're going to test a whole lot and figure out which ones we love.
The lights have all 3 primary colors in them, right?
But yeah,
so theoretically, it could be any color.
So you could decide to have it be whatever you want.
We're actually we're looking at these RGBW. They're red, blue, green, and white. Because we're going to have so much white in this screen, we're going to have an extra white LED in there. And then you can pick you have millions of choices of colors.
Exciting.
And we have a really neat software that's really exploiting the millions of choices. Our particular software is rendering more colors than I've ever seen other people produce. And a lot of people will say that. We have a particular engine and a chipset that is producing a wider range of tones. I mean, you can make brown LEDs, like a beautiful dark browns and things like that you're not seeing generated from anything made with DMX or any of that. They can't generate those colors.
Great, well, I will simply, Karen, did you have one? Go ahead.
Yeah, not really art questions, but other kinds of questions. So I just want to make sure, so this top floor is also office?
Yeah, everything you're seeing in that image there and on the front of Sherman is commercial, it's all office. The residential is on the 2 floors facing Sarah Wills Park, which is
Right.
the other side.
Yeah, okay. And so, I don't know, I know you said you could modulate the brightness of this.
Mhm.
So the question is, the glow from this. You don't want it to be so muted that there's no effect, but also you don't want to have enough glow, you know, from this that you're gonna affect the residential, because this has not been an easy project to get through. So I guess the glow factor is one of the questions that I have, is what's the glow from this? There's no imaging or graphic that indicates
So
what that
we're
effect might
working,
be.
we're working with the lighting designers and the engineers on that right now. That's why it's important that it has the flexibility. In fact, the uplights, the architectural uplights are part of lighting up the soffit. We're working with how does that interact with the artistic display, because there's concern that the just normal architectural uplights you have will overwhelm actually the LEDs, and how do we tune down that uplighting or have it on different times of night so that we don't. What I'm trying to say is the concern is the other way around. The concern is making sure that it's sufficiently bright to be seen, not that's so bright that it's Times Square glow. Or at least that's what we're hearing so far.
Yeah, okay.
But we're aware of that and making sure we can modulate it according to that.
Yeah, so it sounds like you understand the concern. It's not just like what you can see, and it's the
Absolutely.
glow factor, because the people who live back here, not on just this building, but also here and over here, it's like if they're not accustomed to having this glow, it's like, is that gonna create a problem?
Exactly, and it's a LEED gold project, so we also have to deal with light pollution through
Mhm.
project boundaries, so we're well aware of that issue.
Mhm. Okay, all right, good, thank you.
Okay, so I was simply gonna say, kudos for integrating art into the facade, that's pretty impressive, and so great project. At least not to put you on the spot, but I think there are 3 criteria that we use to evaluate public art projects, right, and private. It was like maintenance is one of them, I think appropriateness or something is another.
Yeah, site
and then
specificity, accessibility to the public.
That was the one I was forgetting.
That's the one you were, okay, I'm so glad I could help.
So, but I got the other one, and the maintenance, sort of like.
Maintenance
how
is
we make
also a
sure-
concern.
And so I was gonna try to tell Daniel that I think, Charlie made the point that the LEDs will last 20 years at full and constant use, and these won't be at full and constant use, so hopefully you're gonna get longer than 20 years out of them, and then you'll bring a nice
That's just the
JLG up
strip of
and
LED, which is
somebody
the
else.
cheapest part of the piece.
Yeah, exactly, so anyhow, okay, and it looked like you changed the name from Aftershock to Tableau.
Yeah, there was some pushback on Aftershock. And the other one works good, both names are good. I like Tableau, it's a nice one, it's a nice word, it's a nice map word, it's blank slate, it's other things.
You could call it crack fly. You could, never mind. Fault versus fracking.
Versus fracking, yeah, I still like the Aftershock, but, yeah, we're going with Tableau.
Okay. All right, so unless there's any further conversation about it, discussion, I guess I would like to make the motion that we would approve the proposal in front of us for 385 Sherman Avenue.
I'll second that.
So all in favor?
Aye.
No opposed, so congratulations, you guys are our first approved public art and private development. We are thrilled, and this is a heck of a way to get out of the gates, I will tell you that. So, you set the bar high, and that's exactly where we wanted it, so thank you very much.
Thank you guys very much.
All right,
Thank
we
you,
look
Charlie.
forward to
Thank you.
seeing it in construction soon, right, Daniel?
Hopefully breaking ground this summer.
All right. Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, so that wraps up our action items, so we just have announcements. I'm not sure if anybody from me or Lacey have a few.
I don't have announcements on the calendar.
All right. I don't have any announcements. Does anybody have any announcements? It's getting to be the holidays. We're all eager to break into the end of the year. So, calendaring items.
So, it appears as though we may have a conflict with our meeting room for Thursday, January 15th. There is a rather large event that is taking over Chambers, and then they're going to have a reception starting around 5 p.m. that's expected to go till 9 right outside. It may be a little disruptive for us to try and conduct a meeting with about 100 people out there at our reception. So I just wanted to explore the idea if we did ours as a special meeting, perhaps the 13th or the 14th on the Tuesday or the Wednesday. And the reason I'm proposing those dates is because those are 2 dates that we're looking at for bringing Susan Narduli out, and it might make sense to have the special meeting begin early as a work session with the artist and gather input before we get into our formal meeting. If that doesn't work for the majority of you, then she says she does have some availability if we want to push it the following week. So perhaps Nadia and I can follow up with an email query about availability, and then we'll sort it out from there. But it looks like our regularly scheduled meeting time may be problematic.
Is there an alternate space to meet in?
Where they've got cameras currently, I don't think there is.
I'll have to look into that and come back to you on Monday, but I doubt it.
Okay. Yeah, so I think probably obviously the most important is getting the quorum and holding as close to the date as we can, so potentially. But yeah, probably good to see if everyone's available. And I think we, just based on tonight's meeting, sounds like we're gonna have a fairly full agenda for that meeting, so it'll be important to make sure that we get as many people as we can. And I think, I know we had known Commissioner Toback was planning to travel for that, so it would be good to try to give her a heads up on that too, maybe.
Okay.
Okay, and I didn't write anything else down for calendaring, so anybody else? All right, then officially our